All right, this is it. Social movements case study, Me Too, lesson 4. This is the end of the line for the normal videos in the series. It's been very emotional. Learning goals. Let's have some. You're going to know more Me Too outcomes, specifically in the Australian context. And you're going to be able to compare social movements. You're going to compare Me Too and the Dakota Access Pipeline. And you're going to be able to draw conclusions. Right, more outcomes. Some states in the US are banning non-disclosure agreements that cover sexual harassment. So you can't sexually harass someone and then pay them 100 grand and get them to sign a thing saying that you can't tell anybody that I sexually harassed you. You used to be able to, eh? Shocking. Again, this is another law in the US. As mentioned, some workers did not used to have protection from harassment, such as migrant workers, so like non-US citizens, but now they do. So these laws have been changed. Some survivors are getting financial restitution, successfully suing perpetrators. There's a great increase in awareness about the prevalence of sexual harassment and about the politics of power. There's quite a few surveys before and after the Me Too movement where people get asked about whether people use power illegitimately, and the number of people who think that power does get used in a corrupt way has gone up. Men are more reluctant to hire attractive women for fear that they might have to sexually harass them and then get busted for it. Who knows? But that's certainly been found in business studies. And more reluctant to have one-on-one meetings with women. And I think you know my views on that. This guy, Mike Pence, the Vice President, possibly the whitest man in the world, he will not be in the room one-on-one with any other woman. That's a stated policy that he's had for many years. He'll only be in a room by himself with his wife, so he won't have a lunch with a fellow female politician without another man being there. I'll let you make your own mind up about that one. The outcomes of the Me Too movement in Australia. So, Tracy Spicer, a journalist, investigated harassment in the Australian media industry. Quite a wide-ranging investigation, and she heard a number of complaints about this one person, Don Burke, who, from memory, hosted a gardening show. Pretty sketchy when all of the accusations came out against him. He said, "Oh yeah, but I've got Asperger's, so you know, that's just..." And then the Autism Society were like, "What are you talking about? Why would mild autism make you sexually harass people? That's ridiculous." So yeah, not cool. Something that's not common internationally, but something that has happened here, was that the Australian Human Rights Commission launched an independent workplace sexual harassment investigation. One point that needs to be made is that it's actually harder for victims to come forward in Australia. Our defamation laws are quite strong, so normally, let's see if I can get this right. Normally, if you're accused of a crime, the other people have to prove that you did it. But with defamation laws in Australia, if someone defames you, they have to prove that you are that thing. And if they can't prove it by up to some legal standard, then you can sue them for defamation. There's also not full freedom of speech in Australia. Okay, the country with the strongest freedom of speech laws in the world, obviously, is the USA. Most other countries don't have really, really strong freedom of speech laws. There's a lot of reasons for and against that. Now, an example of this in action was Geoffrey Rush was accused by Yale Stone when they were doing some musical together. I can't remember which one it was. I don't even, from memory, I don't think that she specifically... Oh no, maybe it was a different woman who also ended up... Yeah, so anyway, she accused him, wasn't successful in court, and then he sued her and the newspapers that published the allegations, and he won. So that's would scare people off making allegations if they were worried about being successfully sued and having to pay fines. And in 2019, the Sydney Peace Prize was awarded to the Me Too movement, and that was collected by Tarana Burke and Tracy Spicer. Here's Tracy Spicer. Here's Don Burke. Here's Tarana Burke collecting the 2019 Sydney Peace Prize. I've just realised something weird. Don Burke, Tarana Burke, they've got the same last name. I'm guessing they're not related. Who knows? Okay. What are some possible outcomes of the Me Too movement if it was fully successful? There would be a change to social norms. There would be a presumption that less powerful accusers are telling the truth because of the risks of going public. Remember, it's very difficult to make these kind of allegations against rich, powerful men. And so, for rape, for example, I think only about 30% of rapes are even reported to the police. Because, you know, having to recount the story over and over again to police and then in court, and then, you know, not that many people accused of rape actually get convicted anyway. So is it worth it? That's, I think, how some people view it. But if the Me Too movement was fully successful, this would be one change to social norms. Harassment would be completely unacceptable in the workplace. Now, I think that in Australia, that's fairly close to true already. Certainly not everywhere. There would be more women in power, or women would be empowered, and there would be a change in the gender imbalance and power imbalance in societies. This is if the broader goals of helping marginalised people in marginalised communities was achieved. And there would be a change in culture. So yeah, you might go, oh, Donald Trump, this, that, oh, what, Harvey Weinstein. But it's society produces these people. They don't come out of a vacuum, yeah. So here's a massive list of people who lost their jobs, roles on contracts, and on the right are the people who replaced them. Here's your activity. Draw up that table, and you're going to compare and contrast the Me Too movement with the Dakota pipeline social movement. So there's the hashtags for both of them. No DAPL, no Dakota Access Pipeline. And you've got to give me one dot point for each of those 6 things down the side. What type of movement is it? What's one of their goals? What's one strategy? Which stakeholder groups were involved? Okay, you're going to need a list, a few more for that one. Give me an example of how power was used and what was their decline status. Success, failure, repression, mainstream, co-option, what? We have one more activity for you. This is drawing conclusions. So I want you to answer the so what of these questions. Me Too movement has had a backlash. So what? What does that mean? The Me Too movement's been criticised for not having a clear purpose. So what? What's the outcome of that, do you think? The Me Too movement isn't explained well by deprivation theory. What does that mean? Does that mean there's something wrong with the Me Too movement, or does that mean there's something wrong with deprivation theory? Or it just doesn't apply in this instance? Answer that. Here's a video called Has Me Too Gone Too Far? Me Too Gone Too Far? Me Too Gone Too Far?
All she needs to say is, he sexually assaulted me, he did something, and then it's he said, she said, and I lose my job, I lose my income, I can no longer support my boys.
That does not happen.
It absolutely happens.
If you're on any kind of social media, I am sure you've seen the hashtag #MeToo.
Women are using 2 words on social media to identify themselves as survivors of sexual harassment and assault.
If I were to say Me Too, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Good intentions, bad ramifications.
When I hear the term Me Too, I think of some people that have been rightfully taken down. I also think of some people that have been wrongfully canceled.
A lot of men are confused about what it really means, and they take it as sort of like an anti-men thing or like an attack on men, when it's really definitely not.
I think that not enough people get the alternative perspective on issues like Me Too, which they seem to think is pretty radical, and I don't necessarily think we're that radical.
I guess I'm hoping for understanding as to what anti-Me Too means.
We have this moment where one of the biggest predators that was named in Me Too from the beginning will face trial. So I think it's inevitable that there will be another big wave of energy around this.
Hi guys, I'm Justin. I'm 21 and I'm majoring in sociology.
My name is Sydney. I'm an American-Australian YouTuber and political commentator.
I'm Avi. I'm a creative and a community designer.
Hi, my name's Chelsea. I'm a community organizer and activist.
Hi, my name is Dave Sussman. I am a co-host at America's Voice Live and America's Voice News, and I have a television show called Whiskey Politics.
My name is Blair White. I'm a YouTuber. I also do a social and political commentary.
So can I get my pro-Me Too group over here on the left and my anti back there on the right? The Me Too movement is a witch hunt.
Yeah, I feel like every good intention in the world in the beginning, but I feel like it's spiraled a bit, and there's been some people that have been sort of wrongfully canceled, as we say. Aziz Ansari comes to mind, who was canceled for not basically reading the mind of the woman who withdrew consent after having sex with him. I feel like people shouldn't be collateral damage, and rape accusations really destroy someone's life.
It's a paradigm now where you have men as the universal perpetrator and women as the universal victim. That's for me what it's become. And I just think it's hugely problematic. And I mean, how can you vilify like half the population?
Men are not even allowed to be a part of this dialogue. A lot of men are abused in corporations. So it isn't just about women, it is about the abuse of power.
Can I have my disagreeers come join the conversation?
I have a big issue with the term witch hunt. It feels like a very convenient political term to sort of distance ourselves from what's really happening in the Me Too movement. So
what would you term it as then?
I think it's a movement to examine the power structures and the very real ways that people are falling victim to predation that is upheld by a criminal justice system that allows it to continue to be the case.
But I think that there is a similarity when you consider the fact that many people who support the hashtag and the movement, they really do set aside due process, which is really what happened to women during the actual witch hunts. I think that a lot of times when you see hashtags like believe all women, believe women, and there's no nuance, and that just has to be the case.
But when we get into, you're not saying believe some women, or you're not saying not all men, that we're not really getting at the core of the issue, which is the abuse. And it's not saying like men are all bad or anything like that, but it is saying that maybe we should examine the people who are in power, and since most of those people in power are men, then perhaps we should examine the dynamics and gender and everything like that.
I think that there's definitely a space for discussing sexual assault, sexual harassment, and I think that's awesome to bring it to light. But I think that it's become pretty toxic as a general topic, because I think it's become something that's more about vilifying men than necessarily helping people.
Our justice system does not handle assault cases appropriately and fairly.
Our system does not.
In what context, though?
I mean, think about the entire process, right? From the time an incident happens till a moment where some form of justice is received. The onus is on the victim, the survivor, to navigate the entire system, right? So we're talking about having to share your truth, which is the darkest experience you may have ever been through. Police reporting, the evidence collection is an extremely excruciating process for people, and so often we don't even have the funds available to do that. I know schools in Los Angeles weren't even able to do rape kit testing on campuses. And then you look at the facts and data, that so few people end up in jail, so few people even get their day in court.
Absolutely, and I think too, I mean, again, how you said it puts the onus on the victim already, is you have to prove that something happened to you. And what's difficult about that is, again, a lot of these situations are happening with people in power I mean, if two people are in a room together and there was like no witnesses or no anything, then it's already, I mean, you're already disbelieved because it's your word versus theirs.
What about the thousands of men that are accused in corporations that we've never heard of before, that may not have the socioeconomic power to defend themselves, not only in court, but also in the court of public opinion, and maybe they were falsely accused? How do you prove a negative? How do you prove that something didn't happen when it's a he said, she said?
Well, I think we're getting a little twisted, though. I thought the criminal justice system was innocent until proven guilty, which,
yes,
again, it means...
It's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be. And it is, because it means that the burden of evidence is on the person who is trying to say, you know, alleged...
So the Me Too movement in September of 2018 were standing outside of the Supreme Court, banging on the door, saying that the man is guilty and he should not be nominated as Supreme Court Justice. Based upon what? That the whole Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments were completely ignored on that. No due process whatsoever.
So I would love to have Brett Kavanaugh have a day in court. And that hasn't happened, right?
Because there was no proof provided.
So
there was nothing there.
So then he's innocent. So what are you protecting? He's innocent then, right?
But then why did half of the population of the United States, mostly on the left, including their complicit media, make it sound like that this man was the devil incarnate?
And they believed it, period. No nuance, no evidence needed.
Believe all women.
Exactly.
What I'm hearing is, oh, well, it ruins lives. And he is on the Supreme Court currently. And what I'm not hearing you guys talk about is like the death threats that Christine Blasey Ford received after that.
What about his family? They would have received death threats.
No, but you guys are talking about him. You're not talking about her.
To me, I just think there's this assumption that, oh, you can't disprove a negative, but really it's easier to say that this woman is coming forward or this man is coming forward because they want to get ahead in their career than it is to say that this person who we've trusted in our company, this person who we've trusted in this industry, has been abusing that power for years. How is it that all of these women are all of a sudden just coming forward? Maybe they're coming forward now because there is a space, and maybe because of the nature of trauma, they are just now really kind of like addressing what had happened to them.
I'm a rape victim. I was raped at 18. I understand that you don't really come to terms with that sometimes until like a while later. Like I wasn't able to like really be like, say the words I was raped until I was probably 23, 24, which is like 5 years after. The harsh reality is if you don't seek justice immediately, you don't get a rape kit, and you come forward 20 years later, there's not really gonna be much of a case for you. So I think what's really important is that yes, like supporting people who come forward with these accusations, but also teaching people of any gender that when something like that happens to you, you have to immediately seek help.
To me, it's like revolutionary in the sense of giving power and voice to people who are kind of told to be silent because it's more comfortable for society and for predators who may be in powerful positions.
I fear false accusations.
I am a big proponent of equality with women. I don't want to be, because I'm on the anti-Me Too side here, classified as a misogynist. I believe that the Me Too movement has swung way too far, and a lot of men that I know are deeply concerned about, and I refer to the Harvard Business Review study that just came out 3 months ago that suggested that 58% of men are deeply concerned about being falsely accused. That's changed my behavior in my life. I will no longer date somebody in my industry. What's going to happen in 6 months or in a year from now when we've had a great relationship and it comes to its natural course of end and something happens where she's got this idea in her head that I did something to wrong her? All she needs to say is, he sexually assaulted me, he did something, and then it's he said, she said, and I lose my job, I lose my income, I can no longer support my boys.
That does not happen.
It absolutely happens.
It does not happen.
It happens every single day.
No, mostly people are pushed off. Okay, it could happen.
I think that you're talking about, well, men are scared now to, be alone or whatever, and I think that's really just like men finally being held accountable or maybe not even held accountable, just like be aware of the space that you're taking up and your actions. So yeah, we're talking about false accusations, and I've been falsely accused of sexual assault, and absolutely nothing has happened to me. My reputation is not ruined. I can get a job, I can go to school because I didn't sexually assault anyone.
With all due respect, you're at a much different place in your life than other people who have careers, who have jobs, who have families. You're a college student, and you are not at a place right now where you're carrying those responsibilities.
But I think like why are you, I mean, if you know you're a good dude and you don't inappropriately touch women, like what?
He doesn't know the women are good women.
So for the past 30 years, I've been working in corporations, and I've worked with a lot of phenomenal, incredible, dynamic, powerful women. Maybe 10 years ago, I was going on business trips and we were having dinners and, you know, people are having drinks and things can happen. I'm not suggesting that anything inappropriate happened. But today, that would not be something that I would entertain. It's not about me being uncomfortable. It is that 58% of men, that's 60% almost of men today say that they are uncomfortable being in a business relationship with a woman where they cannot be on a one-to-one. And that is impacting women in their ability to progress in corporations. And I don't want to see that.
I fear false accusations because when we actually look at what a false accusation is, it's an incomplete accusation.
Or it's a lie. It can be a lie too.
Or it's an accusation where the police were unable to obtain all necessary information in order to pursue whatever truth was there. You're right, there could be a small percentage of lies in there, but we also can't get blinded by what we think or want to think a false accusation is because it's politically convenient, because we want to, you know, make it sound like, well, it's your responsibility to ensure your economic future, so, you know, take it as a serious threat that I don't want to be with women in a space because of what's happening. I feel like all of us are talking about real harm, real harm. And so it's sad that we talk about false accusations and we start throwing all these distractions out there when there's real harm that we could probably all be really good at solving together.
I think that the Me Too movement is an extremely important subject. It's changed our politics, it's changed our business, and unfortunately it's changing our culture, impacting younger men. The idea of having confidence to go and talk to a young woman that you find attractive, that builds confidence in men. And if they don't get that confidence from that, they're not finding it elsewhere, and we're starting to see men turn inward. They're playing video games more, they're going to porn more, they're not getting off the couch, and that's going to impact them later in life.
The lines between harassment, assault, and rape are being blurred.
Y'all don't agree at all? Okay.
So if you're in the workplace and somebody puts their hand on your waist and it's unwanted and you go to human resources, the person who did that could be accused of sexual assault. Now, if you get any man on the street or any man or woman on the street and say to them, so-and-so was convicted of sexual assault, in that person's mind, that's the same as rape.
Yeah.
Okay, and so yes, there are a tremendous number of levels that are going to differentiate the seriousness between the hand on the waist, which is unwanted, and should be dealt with. If somebody touches you in a way that you're not comfortable with, you should say to that person, I'm uncomfortable with you touching me this way.
There was a study that was done in Australia on college campuses that basically tried to measure how many women have experienced, or well, it had a very small fraction of men in that too, but it was predominantly women how many have experienced sexual assault and things like that on campus. And the number came back and it was very high. But what they'd included in that was like leering, like someone leering at you. And so I think that part of the problem is that none of this is cool, like none of it's okay, none of it is acceptable. But I think what's happening is that we're conflating these things that are not on the same page. And all it does is inflate the numbers and makes things look much worse than they actually are, and it doesn't reflect the reality of how things actually are.
These things that you consider to be less than leering, touching, harassment versus rape, like by saying that there is a
rape
legally it is less, but there
legally
is
or just in general.
As I'm trying to say, when you're grooming someone, and this is something that people do, they test little things. Like if I look at her in a way that makes her uncomfortable, or them or him in a way that makes them uncomfortable, how are they going to react? If they don't react to that, then you're constantly, these are seen as green lights by predators to increase that behavior. This is my issue with people who are anti-Me Too, is that they look at small details and say that that takes the power away from other things.
Context matters.
All of these
and
context matters. Context
matters.
When you say that 81% of women have been sexually assaulted, including leering and someone entering your body, which is rape.
Okay, so let's take away
that.
Let's take away
and
that.
it's creating
1
hysteria.
in 4 women
it's
are
creating
actually
hysteria.
raped. That's 25%
No,
of
those
women.
numbers have been debunked. As a father, as a mother, would you ever send your daughters to college knowing that 1 in 5 chance of them being raped? Why are women young girls being sent to college with those statistics?
Well, here you go again. You're denying us economic opportunity and like upward mobility because of the situation that happens.
That's so far out of left
that's
field.
the
what you just
question that you're asking us.
No.
I challenge the question because it comes from a place of denying women upward mobility based on a situation that we can't control. I think when you look historically, we've had such limited ways of talking about unwanted and unwelcomed behavior that happens to us. So I think it's a really amazing moment actually that we're in, that the language of leering and rape are put on a spectrum.
But they're not really on a spectrum when they're lumped in as the term sexual
Well, you're
assault.
talking about media's limited ability to communicate these things.
But
what you're
Me Too.
challenging it based.
Also Me Too.
But here we are, Me Too, and here I am dealing with nuance.
But I think
and so
you're
when you
an
sit here and
anomaly.
say that nuance is it's not here, it's not a part of the conversation, you're erasing me.
I think you're actually an anomaly in a lot of this, because when you talk to a lot of people about this topic, you get this very overarching one way is the highway perspective. When you have these figureheads that are saying 81% of the population that is a woman is going to be sexually assaulted in her lifetime, and not breaking down what that means, that's huge. And then you have young people who are being influenced by that. So no, it's like intellectually dishonest to run with something like that. And the worst part is, sorry Blair, all we ever talk about is women. I am so sick of hearing about women. I hate the fact that women they experience this, but how about we talk about what men go through for a hot second? Because I will tell you now, it will probably be in the same frequency. Men are raped in the home at the same frequency by women as women.
You're totally right, and it was one of the big failures early on of the Me Too movement, that it centered the stories of white women explicitly. I say here as a white woman, that it was really focused on celebrity, like they need more media attention and more power at their backs. And meanwhile, hotel keepers and houseworkers, and there were so many people who are experiencing the same types of power dynamics on smaller scales, but are never gonna get the media spotlight.
The media wants to create a victim, they want to create clicks, and so they use the most sensational headlines so that they get those clicks. Context does matter. Because when you're talking about individual human beings, they have their own lives. And I'm not talking about a Louis C.K. who's got millions in the bank. I'm talking about some guy that's earning 50, 60, 100 grand a year that could barely survive. I think we agree on a lot more than we disagree with here.
Me Too was a way for survivors to find each other and to connect. I'm so supportive of the need to find connection in some of the darkest experiences people have in their lives. And for the movement where it's going today, I think there's a great need for accountability and to fix some of the most broken systems in our country today.
I have been personally affected by sexual harassment and assault.
Yeah, I myself in college, my freshman year, I was raped about 2 months into college, actually. If parents knew more of what actually happens on college campuses, then yeah, maybe they wouldn't be sending their girls to college. And so to know that I went to a school that purposely misrepresented the dangers on campus and also did not have resources for people that things did happen to. Statistics on these things are kind of dismissed because people think that it's not possible, and it is possible because it is in the best interest of these institutions to sweep these things under the rug, because where are they going to get their tuition money from? Where are they going to get, their government funding from if the real numbers do come out?
There have been 2 instances. One I absolutely don't want to talk about, but the other one actually, I ended up pressing charges, and he got thrown out of court because yeah, I mean, it's really funny because I'm over here I don't think things are on the same level, but things impact you in bizarre ways. But yeah, because the perpetrator wasn't white, and because he was I'm part of a certain religion, and the police were basically just we can't because of cultural differences, which I don't feel is such a great reason for throwing something out. So that was one of the weirdest, hardest, most, I guess, insulting experiences to go through. But it's funny because as we're talking about all of this, the thing that keeps coming up for me is one of my best guy friends, we've been friends for nearly a decade. I don't know how it came up, but he goes, oh yeah, no, I was sexually assaulted. And I was like, what? And he just brushed it off like it was nothing. And he said, like, it doesn't matter. He's like, it's fine. This just made me think of him the entire time and how under ordinary circumstances he just would be dismissed.
I think what was said was really interesting about how trauma like affects you in different ways. Like I was raped like pretty brutally when I was 18, and I like convinced myself right after that it was somehow my fault because it was on a date with this guy who was quite a bit older. I think he was like 30. And I guess when I was getting passionate earlier about like things like leering, getting conflated with rape, it's because almost insulting. It is insulting to act like they're the same thing. Not that I think you guys do at all. But yeah, that's me.
I was very deeply like triggered, I hate that word, but like brought back that memory of being touched on my back in a way, because that was like how I was held in the moment something happened to me. And it was really hard for me to like accept hugs and like all the like positive touch I needed after that happened, because it instead like was taken from me as a positive thing and turned into a negative. And it was like, it just sits with you. Whether it's dormant or active and present, it's with you.
First of all, thank you for sharing your stories, ladies. It certainly impacted me. The reason I didn't step forward is because what I thought that happened to me was not sexual assault or rape. Because at the time I thought I enjoyed it and I warranted it in my mind. So I look back and I don't look at that as an assault. On paper, probably, it most certainly is. Anybody that abuses their power should be held accountable. So conversations like this, I think, are really good. They're productive, they're important. Thank you, ladies, for sharing your stories, and hopefully we all gain a lot out of this.
I think that violence and harassment and sexual assault against women is happening at disproportionate levels. We're not saying men, it doesn't happen to men, or it can't happen to men, or it's not important when it happens to men and we shouldn't hear men's voices. Me Too is for us as well. Like, we benefit from it just as much as you guys do. But I think we probably agree with a lot more with each other than things we disagree.
Thank you. Great job.
Bye, it was lovely
Thank you. Sorry,
guys. We have to talk more.
And your reflection activity, reflecting on the social movement Me Too. What's a colour that comes to mind when you think about Me Too? What's a symbol, a little icon, and draw a little image showing it. Homework. This practice quiz. Do that. I will know if you've done it because I see the names. Sociology quiz 19. Keep doing it over and over again until you can get 100%. Thank you for participating in this lesson, and don't forget to keep it real.